What is up, everybody? Welcome back to South Florida Wellness Network presents Talkin Wellness. We are here. The full gang is back.
Yay!
And that means we're gonna we've literally been talking since yesterday about all the different things we want to talk about for the rest of the year, and I think now more than ever, we're really excited to continue this year.
Yeah.
But part of that new kind of idea and brainstorming is that we kind of wanted to do something special for you guys. This is going to be the first episode of a monthly series that we're going to be doing called Road to Wellness. This is Talkin Wellness. So we wanted to give you guys some tools to help you on your wellness journey. Okay. So it's going to look a little bit different every month, and it's going to be titled Road to Wellness : whatever the theme of the episode is. So for example, today it's called Road to Wellness : the 5 key recovery concepts. So we're really excited to talk to you guys about this, and I hope that for those of you who are on a journey of wellness or of a journey of recovery or a journey to just achieve overall better state of being, we really hope that you use these tools for your life so that you can not only gain knowledge for your own life, but gain knowledge to help other people around you too, which is kind of the beautiful thing about what we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, Caleb, will you please tell us what are those key recovery concepts so that we can kind of start talking about them and giving examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So we believe that there's multiple pathways to recovery and wellness. And, we really embrace the fact that each person is an individual and gets to choose that path and kind of figure out that journey. But what we're going to talk about are some of the things that are encompassed in any pathway that you pick, because these are just concepts that actually help. They're tools that you can utilize and to grow in your wellness journey. And those 5 key recovery concepts are hope, personal responsibility, self-advocacy, support, and education. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give an overview. For us, the belief of hope is that obviously there's a starting point, right? And I think without hope, we kind of wither away. We don't think that there's an opportunity, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that we can do something, that we can move beyond whatever challenges that we have. And so hope is essential. I think it's like a key thing. A lot of the time, hope is something that's driven before we can see the fruition of it in our life.
Yeah.
So we may be in circumstances or challenges or dealing with things in our life that we don't see an end to, or we don't see the brighter side of it. And so hope kind of provides that, right? It shows you that, man, that there's the possibility even when you feel that things are impossible.
Absolutely.
We're going to also talk about personal responsibility. So personal responsibility is really taking ownership. It's saying that, I may not have control of things that happen to me, but I have control of how I respond, how I take a hold of my wellness, the things that I do in my life, the things that I move towards. So we actually have the power each day to make choices that can maybe turn into possibilities, that can turn into opportunities, that can actually drive change. So anybody, we here sitting here believe that anybody, I believe that anybody can change their life, but it takes work, and so that's where personal responsibility comes in. And then self-advocacy, that is the act of actually beginning to use your voice, right? Using your voice in your own life, beginning to understand the things that you want, your rights as an individual, also like what you will and will not tolerate, and teaching people how to treat us through self-advocacy. And then also self-advocacy can lead into, a cause of wanting to also advocate for others. And then support is essential. I don't think anybody is self-made, or that anybody can just go on throughout life just being alone. So it's really contingent upon the support we have and the people that are around us. They say tell me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. And so I'm a firm believer in that in terms of where we want to go and who we surround ourselves with. And then education. Education is something that, people think of in formalized, like going to school, graduating, getting a degree and things like that. But really what we're talking about with education is self-discovery, right? It's really learning about the self, right? Becoming more self-aware, and then actually pursuing things that you want to grow in areas, which could be, formal education, or it could be taking courses. It could be, learning things on YouTube. It could be just the act of self-reflection and looking at qualities and characteristics that I want to do in order to build my character. And there's many tools in order to pursue education with ourselves.
Yep.
So with that being said, we've just kind of given you just the context and a definition of the key recovery concepts. I wanted to kind of bring you guys into the mix and kind of talk about each one and maybe what your perspective is, or how it has impacted your life. So we'll start with hope. And I want to ask you guys, how has hope impacted your journey of life? Can you remember a time where maybe hope actually like really inspired you or did something, created change? Where did it come from? Where did that hope come from?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go ahead and start if you'd like to.
Well, I was gonna
It's a hard
mention
one for
that
me.
one of my favorite things about these concepts is that they work hand in hand. It's not like an individual thing. A lot of my hope came from my support. A lot of my personal responsibility came in the form of educating myself. A lot of my self-advocacy came in the form of personal responsibility, right? So it kind of, that's one of my favorite things about this, because it just kind of goes hand in hand in every aspect of life. It's not just quote unquote recovery or quote unquote wellness. It can go in the fact of like the way you handle relationships in your life. How are you using these concepts to hold and make sure you're keeping your relationships well? For me, hope came through different areas. It came specifically through a lot of support from my family and from my friends. Hope came from my personal beliefs and my spiritual life. Hope came from my personal responsibility of holding myself accountable and, moreover, loving myself a little bit, right? That's really the venues where hope came from in my life. That kind of like need to believe that either everything is going to be okay, or the belief that I'm capable of achieving that quote unquote okay. So yeah, that's kind of where it came for me.
Okay.
That's how hope looked like in my life.
What about you, Mike?
I don't know. I don't think I'm like that much of a hope person, to be honest.
Dun, dun,
But
dun.
when I think of hope, I don't really think of hope. I think more of like faith
Okay.
in certain things. That's kind of what I think of more. I think like when I think of the word hope, not to put like negative connotations, and I think of it like as just like kind of wanting something to happen without action. That's what I think of hope, but that could literally not be the definition of it. That could be something else. And when I think of faith, I think of it more of the opposite of that. I think of it like you have faith in something, you're staying disciplined within whatever that is, and then you have that same hope that it's going to be rewarded because of that faith. Or, when it comes to hope, like with certain situations, like let's say I hope I get this. I think that's like, obviously that's something that you're going to be wishful for, but I think a lot of times you have to put action into a lot of those things that you're trying to be hopeful for. Like let's say even if you want a PlayStation or something silly, you're probably going to try to be nicer to your mom or your parent or something like that. Or like let's say you're hoping for a promotion, you're going to do things to like elevate yourself to get that job, usually sometimes with that hope that you get it, but to me that's more of like a faith, a faith that by me doing these things, by me going to school, by me disciplining myself, by me not going out to drink or whatever, I'm going to get this job, so I think maybe it's just my definition of the word, but I think I probably do have a close relationship with hope. I just probably use the word faith.
Yeah, I think they're intertwined for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hope is like when you look at hope and you say like, okay, I'm hoping for something. Sometimes, so the way that I look at hope is like, it may be something that you feel is impossible. Hope is like seeing that there's an opportunity that it's not, right? And it takes faith to actually walk in that, which does require action, right? Like faith is action, because if we're trusting in something, then we're moving towards that, typically, so I think it's definitely intertwined when you think of, hope, but, in my life, I think about hope. Now, hope to me is very tied to faith, like now in my journey of recovery, because I have a faith-based journey. But when I think of like hope, previously and like just moments of hope that I have, sometimes it can come in the form of like, maybe I'm in a position where I don't want to be, or I want to be better, or I want better for my life. And then I see like somebody else doing it, or I see somebody else come and they're speaking of their experiences, and we have some shared experiences of like maybe my trauma or some of the challenges I went through, but they've overcome it. And so for me, it's like, man, if they can do it, I can do it. And so those are like moments of hope.
Yeah.
There's also like moments of hope where I see like positive things in the world. Like when I see people do good to people or kindness, that makes me hopeful, because I'm like, man, there's hope for humanity, right? So there's like moments of hope, but I think it's totally intertwined with
I
with
think
faith.
that would be more of like a definition for me of like what I would think hope is. Like you're saying, like let's say you see on Facebook or something, you see someone do a really kind act to a random person, you know, it gives you hope for humanity, you know, not faith because it's not based on really your actions or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
hope because it's someone else doing it and it's giving you a positive outlook on what could be,
Mhm.
you know. So that's definitely where I would see where hope would fall in line. Does it really fall in line with my thoughts so much like that way? No, because I don't really see too much of that stuff. I guess not on pages like that, but there's definitely examples of hope in my life, and faith is a number one thing in my life as well. So like they're tied hand in hand. So like hope is always going to be something that's going to be important in someone's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So think about something that brings you hope, you know, and how you define hope, and, you know, maybe a time in your life where you were feeling hopeless or you didn't have hope, and like what was it that brought hope, whether it was a person or an act of kindness or things like that. The next key recovery concept I want to talk about, though, is probably one of my favorites because it really set the tone. I love them all, actually, so you'll hear me say that a lot, but they're very interchangeable. But personal responsibility was a big one for me,
Yeah.
right? It was me stepping from victimhood to victor. It was me taking ownership of my life. And even, and taking ownership doesn't mean that we don't maybe grieve or process through things that are out of our control that maybe happen to us, but it's how we allow that to shape us and grow us, and the resiliency that we may choose from that. And it's like for me, it's like taking pain and turning it into purpose, right? It's taking the difficulties and turning them into something beautiful. It's looking at challenges as these were seeds that it enabled me to grow into the person that I am today. So for me, personal responsibility is knowing that like I have the power to make a change in my life at any time. Like at any time, if I wanted to start over today because I was having a bad day, I can take personal responsibility and say, I'm going to start over today.
Yep.
And that may come in the form of like, I have to do certain things to do that, right? And using like my tools, like my wellness tools in order to start my day over. So for me, if like I was having a difficult day and I was like, you know what, I have a bad attitude. Like these are all things that I can control. I have a bad attitude. I'm showing up today. I'm kind of like pessimistic. I'm like really down and out. How do I take personal responsibility in that? Well, for me, it's like I look at the tools that help me. One is like, you know, prayer. I do a lot of affirmations. I'll put on a motivational speech or something. I'll do what I need to do, whether it's music, something that's going to kind of change that and switch that, you know, and then even just telling myself the act of, Kaylee, you have the choice in your attitude, you know, and so sometimes it's like taking the focus off myself and then let me go be kind to somebody else because that'll switch me around really quick. So how do you guys you know, take personal responsibility in your life? How has personal responsibility impacted your life? And why is that an important recovery key concept?
I mean, personal responsibility is probably number one if I had to pick one of those. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just accountability for one's actions. I think it's the biggest thing you can have as a person. I mean, I can't think of one bigger trait someone could have instilled in them other than probably like humility, respect, than accountability in oneself. If you take accountability, then you're always going to be learning from the things that you do as negatives, whether you're hurting someone, whether you're
Hurting yourself.
hurting yourself, whether you're doing something wrong in school, whether you're doing something wrong in work, whatever it is, you're going to take self-accountability for that. You're going to change it and you're going to improve. There can be no better thing than that for a human to evolve or become better or for society or themselves than accountability, in my opinion. Like, I don't think there's really much to be said other than like, everybody should strive to be an accountable human, like teammate, coworker, whatever they can be in their life, and you'll be successful.
Yeah,
Seriously.
it
And
always,
I struggle with it massively.
it always starts with that first step, right? The I'm sorry. You know, after whether it be I'm sorry to myself,
And how hard is that
yourself,
to do?
Gosh, yeah.
be able to forgive other people. I'm a big believer in the power of forgiveness, not for the others, but for oneself. That's always been something that I've believed in from a young age.
Yeah.
You know, forgiveness is not about, you know, letting the other person feel less bad about what they did. Or forgiveness is more about making sure that you let go of whatever pain they put you through.
Right. No.
You know?
Personal responsibility leads to freedom. So like I'm a firm believer that with personal responsibility, self-discipline, and like actually like taking that ownership, it actually causes you to be more free. Even though it may seem like it's more work, it actually is creating more freedom in your life, interestingly enough. And I found that. And there's tips to do it, because I think that the more that we learn and grow and these concepts become things that are at the forefront of our mind, we look for ways to grow and evolve, right? Like starting with that, hey, when I feel I've done someone wrong, like making that amends, or if I've done myself wrong. One thing I started this year with my boyfriend is we're reflecting every night. So we have agreed for every day we're going to write in a journal reflection, and we ask ourselves, it's 4 things that we write. One is, what did I do well today? The next thing that we write about is, where did I fall short today, or where did I fail? The next thing we write is, what are the 3 things that I'm most grateful for today? And then the last is just a prayer, you know? And so it's like simple enough to where it really only takes like 5 minutes. And if I'm really into it, I may take 10 minutes to do it, but it's holding me accountable, because then I'm looking at where I fell short, right? I'm talking about that, what I did well, you know? And then I'm also like leading it with like the gratitude piece, you know, which to me is like the humility aspect of it. So there's like little things that you can do. But I think when we start to take personal responsibility of our lives, we create just, I mean, like you said, like just better lives. Like we're just better people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any people personally that are accountable for their actions and other people's actions and how they make other people feel, and they're not successful in life. Like it's hard not to succeed when all you do is take criticisms and things that you've done wrong and continue to improve on them. 'Cause that's what we are as humans. We're not perfect people.
No.
You learn through, I'm a firm believer you learn through experiences. Like you can go to school and do all this stuff, but the day when you go get a job, you're not going to know how to do it until you start doing it.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yes,
so
100%
so
true.
life's all about experiences. So like you need to go through these experiences, you need to learn, and you need to make mistakes in order to be accountable for them to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And evaluate those experiences, right? Because we could experience things all day and be stuck in the same pattern because we're not evaluating our experiences. We're not
100%.
saying like, hey, in this, like where did I fall short? You know, where was my part? What was out of my control? What can I do
And
to
like he
change
said,
this?
evaluation is the number 1 step in accountability. You have to like be willing to say, I'm sorry, or
Yeah.
acknowledge what
Yeah, and-
actually done wrong.
And specifically, I think it's important to touch on this, being willing to forgive yourself
Oof,
too.
yeah, that one was the hardest.
I think that's the hardest part of anybody who's on a journey to wellness, who faced any type of challenge on that journey. I know for a fact that I've struggled with forgiving myself from a very young age.
Yeah.
You know, forgiving myself for being mean to people, forgiving myself for not loving myself, forgiving myself for not taking care of myself.
Right. Making
Those-
some of the maybe not so good decisions.
Yeah, making bad decisions.
Yeah, I had to forgive myself as a mom.
There
Oh my
you
God,
go.
I failed my kid, you know, and it's hard sometimes to like come to face with those things. But
Huge. It's extremely hard sometimes. It can break a person, but that's where those other concepts can come into play, right? Like the reminding yourself of hope, reminding yourself of your support groups, you know, educating yourself so that you know how to do it in a way that's healthy for everybody involved, including yourself,
Yeah.
you know? So it's, personal responsibility, although I'll be the first to say is one of the challenges that I face all the time.
Yeah.
I can fully admit that it's arguably one of the most important things that you can achieve in life.
I think
Yeah.
everybody struggles with that. And they, like I said, no one's perfect. And to like come to terms with that and understand that like I have to continue to improve myself every day in every aspect is hard for people. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to be like,
yeah.
damn, I
there's shame that
got too
comes
angry
with it.
today. I
Yeah.
got to whatever today. And it's like,
Yeah.
I thought I'd been working on that. But
Why did I
you
explode
take
on
that
this person
accountability
today?
and you improve. That's
Yeah.
that's all you can
And
do
celebrate
as
the
humans.
wins of acknowledging and then making the correction, because too often people feel shame and then they don't move forward in the amends or like looking at it.
Like he
and-
said, you beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
You get so caught up with this like idea of, you know, you're shamed about it that you don't want to make these changes, and it starts
And look
with
how
one thing.
problematic it can be. That's what happened to me. Because of the constant shame, I got stuck in a hole and I didn't want to get out of that hole because I felt too ashamed to move forward. You
Oh,
know,
100%.
it took literally people to push me and say,
I
like,
think
get out.
everybody in
Yeah.
recovery did that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
the
I can think
antidote
of-
to shame is vulnerability. And it's so hard. How much harder is it to be vulnerable because it feels like a nakedness where you're exposed and you don't know what could happen on the other side?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people, let's just take an example of like people in recovery. Let's say when they finally make that change for their life, I'm sure they're like, you can continue to have that comfort of doing the drugs and doing things like that, but it takes you to get to that super vulnerable, uncomfortable place to be like,
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you have to be depleted to understand that the need that you have is not in these things, right? Because they're not filling that space, right? Like you're filling a void and pain and things like that. You're numbing with drugs. You're coping with this and that, and you're in these behaviors, and it's a cycle because then you feel ashamed about it. So what do you do because you don't have the tools? You keep doing this because you're trying to run away from the challenges. So it's hard. It takes a lot of support. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of hope. It takes a lot of the things that we were discussing to get to a place where you're like, man, I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to own some of this stuff, but I'm going to walk into this healing journey of wellness, and that's the vulnerability. It's like, I remember the first time that I admitted like that I was using, I was using drugs, and I admitted like, and I did do this crime and I did do this. And I went in and was honest about these things, and there was so much freedom. And I walked into that being like, okay, I could say this, and what they could do is, one, put me in prison, to completely like tell me that I will not get custody back of my son. But I was so at a point, and I had support and I had all these things, that I wanted to take personal responsibility because I was wanting to move towards change. And the outcome of that was miraculous. All my charges were dismissed. I got custody back of my son. Like, that was a process. It took, a year of seeing and moving towards that change. But it was me being honest and telling the truth about where I am, but where I'm going. Right. It wasn't
and without
just
that accountability, you'd just be in the same place.
Right.
Just doing the same things.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of moves us forward into our next step, which would be, I guess if we're doing the HPRESS, we kind of have an acronym here that we use to kind of remember these HPRESS.
HPRESS.
Each letter is a part of the concepts. Education. I think that education, I love the way you explained it. Education is not always just sitting down with the book and trying to figure it out. Education can be studying yourself. Education can be studying your friend groups and your relationships, the people that you're hanging out with. Education can be learning methods on how to cope. Like we do our wellness toolbox here, right? And that's something that we're going to be talking about in the next episode of Road to Wellness, is what does that look like for your life? What are the tools that you can use to cope with all the struggles that may happen in your day-to-day without depending on the things that are affecting you in a negative way, right? So I think that education, especially here, I've learned that education can come in so many different ways, but it can all lead to a positive push forward. Like I love our training so much because they're even though they're a lot of information, and you gotta read this, and we have to get people coming to teach us stuff. You're still educating yourself to move forward, not only with yourself, but with the people that we work with in our community, right? So it's really interesting to see education in such a different perspective when it comes to recovery or to wellness, right? So I love the education aspect of it. What do you guys think?
I'm a firm believer in education of all aspects of everything. I mean, I hate school. I will say that. I'm not a big fan of schooling and general school, because at the end of the day, when you go to school, especially like college and stuff, you're paying an insane amount of school, an insane amount of money for free knowledge. Realistically, it's going to be out there one way or not. And they're teaching you most of the things that you really don't even want to know, or making you take classes for things that you really won't ever apply to things in your life. So that aspect of education I don't really like, but as far as learning things, I don't think there's such an importance to learning. Whether it be YouTube, whether it be taking courses, whether it be going to school, whether it be self-education, whether it be rap meetings, whether it be whatever it is, just getting yourself that education.
Whether it be therapy.
Therapy.
No, 100%.
Therapy can be hugely educational.
Oh gosh,
we don't know everything as humans, so like to think that you do is insane. And like I think you need to take the understanding of other people that are professionals, whether they be therapists, whether it be people on YouTube that are just insanely talented at things. I think you have to take the input of other people and apply them to your life sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think you can learn a lot in a short amount of time nowadays.
I just thought of this, educating yourself on your relationships and the things that you're doing to make sure that you're not hurting the people around you.
The biggest thing is like, I want a PhD on me, right? Like, and I've always said that is like the more that I can learn about me, because that is what's going to help me to be successful and impact the world. So why do I do the things that I do? Why do I think the way that I think? Is this helpful? right? What is unhelpful about some of my narrative, right? Or some of the things that I do. It's like asking yourself those questions and getting curious, and then teaching, like learning about what my strengths are and like some of my gifting and my ability. What are the things that I really like? Because if I know what I like and what my strengths are, that's probably where my career is going to go.
Yeah.
It's like when you start to ask yourself these questions and ponder and reflect and you learn about yourself, then it drives where you want to like go into your education in terms of like whether it's a formal or different experiences or where you want to kind of immerse yourself. But it's like asking those questions, and if we want change and we want to grow in our lives and then we're not asking ourselves these questions, we're not going to.
Yeah.
Growth is intentional. You have to be intentional with these things. And I think education begins with me.
Yeah, and speaking of growth, it's a great segue for the next one. This is my favorite concept because it's the one that I struggle with the most. Self-advocacy. I'm in the last, not last episode, but the New Year's episode, we talked a little bit about the burden of a worrier, right? I'm an overthinker. I'm a worrier. I'm someone who thinks too much about the future that doesn't focus on the present, right? That often leads to me making decisions in the world that I'm like, why didn't I stand up for myself, or why didn't I speak my voice when I was obviously uncomfortable? To share a little bit, there's some friends that I have. I don't want to be too specific in case they ever watch this, but there's some friends that I have that often, whenever I see them, I don't see them often, but once in a blue moon when I do see them, I'm always welcomed with comments that are very offensive, whether it be they comment on the way that I look or my race or my culture. They start speaking in this weird like, "Oh, ¿qué pasa, hermano? How are you doing?" It comes off very like racist. Is what it comes off as. And whenever I'm in that situation, I immediately like irk, and I immediately get really like stiff. And again, in trying to not be super specific, but somebody in my life, they notice this, and when that happens, like they try to calm me down and like whatever. But that's something that for me, I and what I regret today is that I didn't self-advocate. I didn't stand up and say, "Hey, I don't mean to, like, you can joke, you can be whatever, that's fine. But I really appreciate it if you wouldn't joke about this, because the way you're doing it is really offending me, and I would really appreciate because it doesn't come out as comedy, it doesn't come out as joking with friends, it comes out of making fun of my race, and I'm not gonna stand for that. But I did stand for it because I didn't self-advocate, right? So it's something that I struggle with, and I know this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially if you're in recovery, especially if you're in a journey to wellness. With my peers, I always talk to them about it, like sometimes, because we're in such a vulnerable state in our journey, it can be really hard for us to express our voice because we don't want to sound like the victim, or we don't want to sound like needy, or we don't want to sound offensive, or we don't want to sound like the odd one out, the ugly duckling. But it's so crucial to self-advocate because your feelings are valid. Your mental challenges are valid. Your experiences, if something makes you feel bad inside, those feelings are valid, right? And the people around you need to know that. So I've tried my best to steer away from this idea, and I'll be the first one. I've been the worst at this, especially growing up, and with all my friends, I like to joke around, like I don't care. But something that I've had to do, because my fiance self-advocated to me, she said, "I don't like it when you joke about this specific subject." So I had to take some personal responsibility. See how it connects? Take some personal responsibility and say, "I apologize for that. I'm not going to joke about that around you ever again. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Right? So because she self-advocated and because she told me, now I can show her more love and show her more respect by respecting her opinion, right?
Right.
And I think, especially, we talked about it in our cancel culture episode, the idea, it all comes down to respect, right? You want people to respect you, you need to advocate for that. You need to say it vocally. "Hey, what you said offended me. I would really appreciate if we just don't say it like that again."
Right. I think we teach people how to treat us, but it's a mutual thing, right?
Absolutely.
So even if you have somebody who may be saying something that's like really offensive, conflict sometimes is really uncomfortable for people, but I think that when we can look at conflict in a more positive way of like, this could actually lead to a greater relationship and an opportunity to educate, right? So if somebody's saying something that's extremely offensive, even when I go to talk to them about it, like I can educate them on why. Like, hey, I know you joke around with me and you may not be intentional in this, but let me tell you like why this is, why it kind of bothers me, because it is bothering me, but I know that we have a good relationship. So I just want to tell you as your friend or whatever. Because a lot of the time we're so afraid of conflict, but I believe conflict is so necessary and it's a positive thing. Obviously, we don't want conflict of like yelling and screaming and cussing at each other, but just saying like, man, there's a discomfort
Just
here.
like being direct. more
Yeah,
than
there's a
anything.
discomfort here. Let me have the conversation. Let's move into a better relationship like you did with your fiance, right? Because it takes two. Like relationships take work, and especially the ones that you have close relationships. And so I always ask myself too, like I pick and choose my battles, right? Like, is this worth my energy? Is this person somebody that I'm really around, or is this person, what is their intention? Is this somebody that if I have this conversation with them, they can receive it well? Or is this somebody that like I'm not really around, I'm just gonna like, move past it and just kind of stay away from the person? Is like picking and choosing that. But self-advocacy is like so important, and it's uncomfortable. It is 100%. If you're somebody who doesn't naturally speak up for themselves, or you have like low self-esteem, or you're insecure, like that's okay. That was me. And so it was so hard for me to even speak about myself or stand up for myself or whatever, because I didn't feel good about myself, and that was where a lot of people came into my life and advocated for me. And I had to grow as I have grown in my self-confidence, as I've worked on my self-esteem issues and things like that, to get to a point where I realized that like my thing, like I matter, and like the things that I say matter, and that the way people treat me matters,
Yeah, you matter, but everybody matters.
It's funny. I mean, there's people that are way overboard with their self-advocacy, and then there's people that
balance.
I
absolutely
totally
don't.
agree with you.
And there's people that absolutely don't. And I think that's so funny in the contrary of that. Peter, my dad, he's like the main one I saw like growing up when I was young, like when I was 14, 15, and this was years. And he's the nicest person I've ever met in my life, ever. Like ever. You cannot
Peter's like
mess with him. You cannot mess with his peace in his life. But he will never let someone just do something like, or like, let's say he's at a store, like take a customer before him, or he will never let someone just like, I don't know what the word is for that. Like
shatter his vibe.
It like disrespect them, or
like
certain,
doing wrong. Like when you're
he will
seeing
always
people,
speak up for himself.
Oh, okay.
He'll always speak up for himself. Like no matter how nice he is, that's one thing I learned from him. He will always speak up for himself. If something is broken, he'll take it back. If something he doesn't like, he'll say it. If he wants this extra thing he's paying for, he'll say it. And that's one thing I learned at a young age. It's like, at the end of the day, as long as you're respectful, there's no reason with advocating for yourself, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
It comes down to a level of how comfortable are you with that conflict with that person.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with conflict as long as they're, someone that's close to you, or like she said, it's not like a fighting back and forth. Let's say you're at a store and someone doesn't take you, and they drops, one of their friends comes up to the counter and they take them before you, and it's like, hey, like, I understand you guys are friends, but I was here before him. Can you take me first? Da, 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 da. That's how things should be handled. Could you not do that and let him go? Yeah. That's not necessarily advocating for yourself. And that happens all the time. That's something, I don't even really care about. And I'll let that happen all the time. So like you said, you gauge certain situations and you understand like, this isn't really that big of a deal. I'm not really that bugged about this to really talk about it or bring anything up. So that's what it really comes down to, is understanding what scenarios you're willing to fight for.
Right.
And who's there, if it's your best friend, like in that scenario with you, if those are truly your best friends, they probably wouldn't be saying stuff like that to you. And if they are your best friends, it's because they don't understand that it's actually affecting you or hurting you in that way.
Right.
And it's so important for you at that point to advocate for yourself, because you're only hurting yourself and them at that point. because they're going to continue to bully. They're going to maybe continue to bully others that are their friends, and they could be hurting them. And it's just a cycle of people just being hurt and hurt people hurting people. So
perfect. Hurt people.
Yeah,
hurting people.
because at the end of the day, people that bully people and make fun of people, call you ugly or whatever, are people that have gotten that same treatment back, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they're actually been bullied. It just, you know,
It's
especially
just-
as guys.
Yeah.
Especially as guys, I know all of my friends are like that. Like, bro, shut up, bro. Like, all of my friends are like that. But there's been a lot of times, especially as we've gotten older in the last 2 or 3 years, where we've been like, hey, bro, I feel like you've disrespected me a little bit more than like, you know, you should have. You know, like, there's a difference between playing games and like and talking between cursing someone out.
One of my best friends. I love you, Sam. If you're watching this, we've talked about an array of things, and there's been times where we talk about difficult subjects where I got very upset because he kept bringing back the same argument every single time we saw each other about something in his life, and I told him, bro, like, either change this problem or don't talk to me about it anymore. And I could tell the way I said it wasn't respectful in any way. It was actually very harmful. And I literally afterwards, I was like, look, I apologize for the way I said that. I didn't mean to offend you in any way. I'm just a little upset as well because I care about you. And we kept talking, right? But it's that, again, coming back to that personal responsibility, coming back to educating yourself and your friends, self-advocating for yourself and making sure that you're understanding what they're self-advocating, that you respect that as well, right? It all comes back to these concepts of recovery, right? And I know we don't have a lot of time left, so let's just talk about the last one, support. Support is such a huge part of recovery, whether it be recovery because of substances, whether it be recovery because
relationships,
finances, friendships,
mental
work,
health, just anything, any of that.
Any aspect in life could benefit from support from friends, from family, from people that you care about, from people that you go to find support, like groups, therapy, you know, peer specialists, community workers, counselors, whatever it is, churches,
synagogues, all of that. Yeah.
Support is key. I think anybody in recovery or anybody on a journey to wellness will tell you absolutely that it would have been a lot harder if it wasn't for support. It would have been a lot harder if it wasn't for someone who stepped in and said, I got you, man, or I got you, girl. You know,
I think support is essential to life in general for every person. Like, there's no discrimination on that. You know, like, everyone can benefit from support. And I think sometimes it's hard for certain people to have that support, you know, or they don't have as much support as other people. And it does impact people's lives, you know. But the good thing is that, like we just talked about with hope, personal responsibility, these things are stuff that you can formulate. Like, you don't have to have a big family, or you don't have to not have family members to have support. A lot of people create family through they make new family. If you have, like, maybe you're somebody who, like, man, I don't really have family, or, you know, my family isn't the healthiest right now. You can find other ways to cultivate support with other people,
Absolutely.
you know, and I think that's so important. And one of the things that I, you know, ask people, like, when I'm, like, working with them and supporting them is, like, who are your main supporters, you know, and what does that look like? And, like, each support can be something that you go to for something different, because I have, like, my best friend that I go to for, like, everything. Yeah. And then I have, like, other people that I'll go to for certain things, but not other things. Yeah, more things, exactly. Yeah. I have my support in my, you know, like, my work family and things like that. But the one biggest thing is just knowing that, like, you have that, and if you don't have that, how to cultivate that, you know, and how to begin to explore through educating yourself about who you are. You'll know, you know what, maybe I should meet people. If I'm somebody who, like, loves fitness and I love to, you know, ride my one wheel and do things, where am I going to cultivate friendships? Probably at, like, parks or gyms or, like, whatever, where there's people doing the same thing that I do, gaming, or somebody who does videography. Like, you want to cultivate support with like-minded people, you know? So where do you begin? Start to look at, who am I? What do I like? You know, like, what are the type of people that I would like in my life? What is the type of friend that I am and I'm willing to be? Those are the type of people that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you touched on it so beautifully. Again, it kind of comes back to that self-advocacy, right? Making one of the beautiful things about the word family is that nobody said it had to be blood.
Yeah.
The word family in and of itself, nobody said it had to be blood. You can make your own family. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a blood family with you, you can make your own family. That's why I realized this concept when I was young, and I made it a personal goal in my life from that point till today, that all my very close friends, they're not my quote unquote best friends, they're my brothers. And I literally call them my brothers from another mother. Like, I know that's a very funny phrase that
I
people
use it,
use all the
sister
time.
from another mister.
Yeah. But I actually mean it. Like, and they know, my brothers know, like, you guys are my family. Yeah. Like, if you ever need support, I got you. And if I can help you, I will, because cultivating that, it's building your circle of support, right? We believe here in the circle of support, making sure you analyze what are the supports, right? You start with yourself in the middle, and then you keep growing that circle. Who's that next section of your circle? Then who's that other section? And so until you start realizing that, okay, I do have a lot of support. Or if that list is not very big, continue to build relationships and continue to build groups of support in your life so that circle can grow and you can find support in any aspect of your life whenever you need it, So I'm a big advocate for, like, making your own families, whatever you call it.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we can get wrapping up. We really want to leave you guys just with, like, the thought process of those 5 key recovery concepts. HPRESS, hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support.
HPRESS.
And we look forward to our monthly series of Road to Wellness. So we will kind of resume with this theme. And we love you guys. Thank you so much for continuing with us in 2024. It's going to be a great and grand year, and we're all going to get well together.
Absolutely. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and if you're listening to us, please give it that 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. We love you. Bye.
Bye.
Check.
We are in like Flynn.
Like Flynn.
I don't know where that analogy came from.
Yeah, poor Flynn. He's still in somewhere, but he's been lost for years. Anyways. 3, 2,